Hi, I'm going to walk you through how to follow these instructions to go through this tutorial in R. I'm not going to do a video for every single tutorial that we have because I want you to get used to looking at the documentation, practicing the code, and then once you get several hours of experience under your belt, it will feel a lot less intimidating. Anytime you use any packages in R and RStudio, there's always a good amount of documentation. And you need to keep in mind that sometimes things will just not work. With an open source tool, folks in the community are always updating packages. Sometimes a package update breaks an older version of a package, and if something like this happens, it's always good to try to troubleshoot a little, see if that's the issue by reinstalling a package, or once you feel like you've exhausted all options, reach out to me. I don't want you to feel frustrated, but I do want you to get used to improving your critical thinking and problem solving skills, because this is what you would have to actually walk through in the workplace if you were doing any type of computing with a data science tool such as RStudio. And so there's all of these hyperlinked links here. Otherwise, you can just start going through this. I would definitely take the time to read this. Not something I'm going to do in this short video, but you should read through it. You want to make sure that you have the right packages installed, and so you can install these packages right from RStudio. And so what I would normally do is come into R and then install the packages that you see listed here. Now, I do have to go back and forth. If you were doing this on your own, I suggest either having two monitors or some other way to look at this information and then go back to R. So this does say if you're using a Windows machine, you need to install R tools first. I'm going to come over to R. I'm just going to clear out my workspace here. And I'm going to close out some of these. So when you come in, you may actually have some workspace information here from the last time you used R. And so if I go to my packages, I most likely have R tools already here. You could scroll down and look for R tools. And if you don't see it, I would go to install R tools. And now you can see it just took a couple of seconds to show up. And I know I've had it installed before, but again, with an open source tool, sometimes a package overwrites another package, and you do just have to go out and reinstall that package. Now what's interesting here is sometimes, depending on the version of the R that you're using, a package won't be available. So in this case, I'm getting an error that says R tools is not available for R version 3.6.2. And I can come in here and go to About RStudio. And this is the version for RStudio, but we do need to find out what version we have for R. And so you would have to go into R and look at that version. What I would do when you go through these, because we're all going to be using different versions, depending on whether or not we installed it in HIM 5113, not everybody took the database course at the same time, is I would walk through this. If you get errors, try to troubleshoot them. If you exhaust all means, reach out to me, and then we'll work together to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to go to the tutorial, and so there's some other packages here that are recommended, but I'm just going to start here with getting my packages from the R-CRAN repository, and I'm going to install Xgboost. So I can copy and paste that. I'm going to go to install. I'm going to paste this here. It popped up, which means it's available. Sometimes you get this. One or more packages involves reloading. It's strongly recommended to restart. So we can say yes, and that's restarting the session. And it may take a minute or two to restart the session and then install Xgboost. And then I'm going to go back to my tutorial here. And now we have to load the package. And so instead of using library, this time we're going to use the require keyword. And I'm going to copy and paste that. Of course, you can always type that, whatever is easiest for you. And then I'm going to go back to my tutorial here. And so there's mushroom data. This is obviously, it's not a healthcare data set, but I always say use the sample data set that comes with these packages because it's the right data types, it's the right number of columns. You want to make sure that you get this working before you try using your own data set. So the data set for the mushrooms is called this right here, and it's embedded with the package. The data sets are already split into these two subsets. One is called train and one is called test. So anytime you use any kind of machine learning, you always have to first train the data and then you have to test the data. So anytime you see in this tutorial some code surrounded with this square outline, it's a code snippet and you could copy and paste all of it into your R and run it. And just like you saw in the violin graph video from earlier, you can see that the data sets are now showing up here. For example, the test is a list of 2. The train is pretty large. And then you have test and train here. If you click on these, you will actually see the data show up as a data set over in your upper left-hand screen there. So I'm going to go back over to my tutorial. Again, make sure you read through this. And now we're going to use the str train. And so you don't have to worry about the math here, you know, the integers and the variable names. We're going to go through this course and we're going to break down some simpler R and RStudio data science computing packages. This is probably the most complex. Xgboost uses machine learning to create a decision tree. We're going to spend several weeks on creating decision trees. I just want you to get a feel of what is the most complex machine learning algorithm that you could use right now so that you're less intimidated as we go through the course. So my cursor is flashing. I have no errors. I'm going to come back over here and I'm just going to make sure that what I see here is what actually showed up in my R screen. And then we're going to look at the dimensionality of the data set. So this tells you how many columns and how many rows. So I'm going to use the dim command, and you do not need to memorize anything here. This is solely to get you used to working with a complex algorithm and to be able to see the result at the end. And the output matches with what I saw, so I'm going to do the same thing now that I did on the training data set with the test data set. Oops, sorry about that. And then I'm going to go back to my tutorial and make sure you're reading through this. It just tells you this is a smaller data set for the tutorial, but Xgboost is really built to manage very large data sets very efficiently. And now we're going to use the class command to make a matrix. And again, don't worry about the math terminology here. And we're going to do the class command. And as long as I'm getting the same output that you see in the tutorial, it means that everything is working as expected. Now we're going to train the model. So read through that, and we're going to put this piece of code. Make sure I have it all copied. I'm going to copy and paste the code here. And these are just the percentages of the error, the percentage of error in the training of the data set. It's not an error, meaning that something went wrong. Nothing went wrong there. And we can also try these other types of matrices. And you can try each of these if you would like to. Now I'm just going to skip down to the prediction. And so the prediction with this machine learning algorithm is to go through the data set and predict which types of mushrooms are safe or not to eat. So a classification puts data into buckets. So I can actually, I can copy and paste all of this. The line that has the £sign is a comment. That's not actual code. When you see something like this, PRED, that variable not found, I'm going to come back up here, and if it hasn't been found, you want to make sure that you just try that line of code first. And what's happening now is you see, excuse me, that the object BST is not found. So I'm going to come back up here and say, what did I miss? Because I skipped over some of this. And I did not do this line right here. I did not create the BST variable. So I'm going to copy that and paste that here. And now I get dtrain is not available. And so you can see what's happening, that if you skip over anything, you need to troubleshoot a little. So now I'm going to go look at why is dtrain missing, and it's because I skipped over building this D matrix. So I'm going to come back over here and copy that and paste it. And now we're back working again. So now I'm going to come back up here, and we know that we have to use one of these BST variables or we'll get an error. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and everything looks okay. You can see these variables are making their objects over here in the global environment. So now I can move down to the prediction, and I'm going to copy the prediction first. And you can see that made the global variable here PRED. And now I am going to print the prediction. And my output matches. And I can print the head, meaning the first part of the file, if I want to, down here. The numbers don't look like binary classification, 0 and 1. There has to be a transformation in order to convert those numbers to 0 and 1. And so the only thing that Xgboost does is a regression, and that's the algorithm. It's a model that performs a binary classification that puts data into buckets. So now I'm going to transform the data. And now you can see the zeros and the ones. Zeros would be one bucket, ones would be another bucket. Now we're going to measure the model performance. With the error rate of about 2%. And I'm going to skip down here a little bit. And go to the information extraction. And you can see here that if I skip over something, like the label was not found. So sometimes you can skip over code if you want to skip down to, show the plot. Other times you really have to go through and follow everything here. And so I know we skipped over the label. Let me go back and take a look at this error. We got some errors here, but it did bring back the test error. And let me see if I can bring up the tree for you. And now let's plot the tree. There we go. And here is your decision tree. So I know this is hard to see. So we're going to zoom in on it. And so I don't expect you to know anything about the math here, or certainly not the types of mushrooms, because I certainly don't know about these mushrooms. But this is a prediction model that predicts which mushrooms are safe to eat or not. And so we're going to go through later on in this course, I think it's somewhere around weeks 5 and 6, where we create decision trees that are healthcare related and they're meaningful for you so that you understand how to create a decision tree. What I wanted you to get out of this is to be able to know that there's math behind it, there's an algorithm, and so that algorithm can actually go through a data set and can determine the classification of whether or not something belongs in bucket 1, such as safe to eat, or bucket 2, not safe to eat, using an algorithm and machine learning. And that's it.